Welcome to PHT in the Morning with your host, Pastor David Miller from the Pentecostal Holiness Tabernacle in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of PHT in the Morning with Pastor David Miller. I am Pastor Miller and we will be your host this morning, and we hope that we can be a blessing to you today. We are looking at some scriptures here this morning in the book of Joel, chapter number 3, and I'm going to read verse number 14. Verse 14 says, "Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision." So, talking to you about these particular verses about the valley of decision here. We've heard this talked about by many different evangelists, pastors, and so on. And there's a little bit of a controversy, I guess you would call it, over what exactly does this mean and what really is the valley of decision. Now, I want you to notice with me, and we'll be going over these scriptures here with you today. First of all, Joel 3:14 says, those multitudes that was seen in this valley of decision, he said, because the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. So many preachers, many evangelists especially, have drawn from this passage to challenge the people they were preaching to make a decision for Jesus Christ, or to choose who they're going to serve, either the Lord or Satan. And others, of course, sees this as a time of judgment when the Lord's going to decide the fate of the nations, which is it really? We start to wonder, is this an invitation, or is this a prophecy of doom of sorts? Now, all I'm going to do is give you kind of what the scripture says about this, and tell you what we think about it. And really, ultimately, it comes down to this, that no matter what we see this as, we still know that people's going to have to make a choice. They're going to have to make a decision if they're going to live for the Lord or not. Now, in this verse here, we see that this is a time when actually God is going to judge the earth. Now, verse number 2 says, and I'll read this here to you in that same chapter, "I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, which they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land." So here the Bible calls it in verse 2, the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now the valley of Jehoshaphat and this valley of decision, it looks like, is the same exact place. And it goes on to say they've cast lots for my people. And he talks about giving their boys for harlots and selling their girls for wine and so forth. He said, "What have you had to do with me anyway, Tyre and Zidon, and the coast of Palestine, that you will render me a recompense and recompense me swiftly and speedily?" He said, "Will I return your recompense upon your own head? You've took my silver and my gold and carried it to your own temples." And he goes on to say, many other things here about this. And he's talking basically about the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem being sold to the Greeks, that they could be removed far from their own land and away from their own borders. He said, because of this, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them and return your recompense upon your own head, or judgment would come upon them because of the things they had done to God's people. Then he said, this is going to come back. So they're going to reap what they sow. Verse 8 said, I will sell your sons and daughters to the land, into the land of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabaeans and people afar off, for the Lord has spoken it. He said, proclaim this among the Gentiles. Prepare for war. Wake up the mighty man. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Now start to notice here in verse number 10. He said, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I'm strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about thither, cause the mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Then verse 12, let the heathen be weakened, come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now notice this, verse number 12, let them come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, and the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Then, the very next verse is verse 14 that I read to you right here. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. So, right back to verse 12 again, let the heathen's going to be weakened. They're going to come to the valley of Jehoshaphat. He said, there will I sit to judge the heathen round about. The sickle will be put in because the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down. The press is full. The fats overflow because their wickedness is great. Now, if I can say, and then the very next verse is multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Now, if I can go back and say this, I feel like this context of Joel 3 is clear in this particular place, that this is a time when God will judge the earth. Because verse 2 that I already read to you said, I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the valley of decision. And he said, I will enter into judgment with them there. This is very, very specific and powerful right here. I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people, on behalf of my heritage, on behalf of Israel. The valley of Jehoshaphat is then, therefore, the same valley of decision. Now, I think it's interesting to note what Jehoshaphat really means. And I know that was the name of certain rulers of the day. But Jehoshaphat, the meaning of it is Yahweh judges. Yahweh judges, or thus the decision being made in this valley. So is that decision men's decision, or is this decision God's? So you look at this again. When he says they're going to come down, he's going to enter into judgment with them. And he said that Jehoshaphat, the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the valley of decision, meaning Yahweh judges or God judges. So being made in this valley, it looks like the decision is God's, not the multitudes or not the people and the literal geographical location of this valley is probably the valley of Kidron, which is just on the east side of Jerusalem. So you notice here that it looks like the focus of Joel 3 is actually on the future, and a time that will include a gathering of nations, a judgment on wickedness or the wickedness of the world or the way people live, thus verse 13. So let me read verse 13 again. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, and the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. So then there is other signs here of this. And Joel's prophecy of the valley of decision, we can find here, like in verse number 15, he said, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. So I wanted you to notice this right here, the prophecy there. And immediately following this prophecy of judgment, Joel kind of transitions into a description kind of like the of what the Lord's description was of that literal 1,000-year time period that follows tribulation, or what you and I call the millennial reign of Christ as he rules as the King of Jerusalem. So we know that some interpreters are going to argue the fact that the millennial reign is figurative. And a lot of folks will say that, but I don't believe that. I believe it is a literal 1,000-year reign. And actually, did you know the 1,000-year reign, I think if I'm telling it correctly, it's mentioned 6 times. That like from Revelations, you can look at Revelations 20, verse 1 through 7. And it looks like, to me, that this valley of decision is really not about humans choosing whether or not to follow Christ, but rather it's God handing down his decision of judgment of the tribulation. Wickedness will be dealt with. We know it will. And he will deal with this wickedness of men and mankind. And let me say this, just look around the world. Look how things are going. Look how ungodly and sinful our world is going today. This wickedness someday will be dealt with swiftly and justly and decisively. I just want to say thank God for his promise that he says in his word that he'll make everything right one day. And look at verse 16. The Lord shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and earth shall shake, but the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So shall you know that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall be no more strangers to pass through her any more. So thank God he promised that someday there would be a great refuge for his people. So I am very, very thankful when I read scriptures just like this. So thank God for these verses today. So, whether you believe, I think it's pretty clear what this is talking about. But even if you think, well, I've always heard it preached that people was there making needing to make a decision. They're in the valley of decision. Although I do believe absolutely for a fact that people need to make a decision someday. And that day ought to come very quickly. We need to make up our mind if we're going to serve Satan or if we're going to serve the Lord. So I believe that. But in this particular case, I believe it's God making that decision and what's going to be taking place there in that valley of Jehoshaphat in that day, because the day of the Lord's going to become near in that valley of decision. The sun and moon's going to be dark. The stars are going to withdraw their shining, and the Lord will roar out of Zion. I'm looking forward to that day. But let me say this to you. For those of you that say, I thought that was us, or men and women, human beings, making a decision whether or not to serve the Lord. Well, even though I don't think that's what it means right here, I do believe that some people are in a valley or in a strait or in a deciding mode. Which way will I go? Will I serve the Lord or not? And I will refer you to the book of Joshua chapter 24 and verse number 14. He said, I've given you a land which ye did not labor, cities that ye built not, and dwell in them, and vineyards and olive yards which ye planted not to eat. Verse 13, now, therefore fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and truth. Put away the gods of your fathers, that they served on the other side of the flood. And verse 15, this is for you today. If it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, then choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your fathers that they served on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So today, I want to ask you, and I hope I helped you on that valley of decision and what it really means. But I want to tell you in Joshua 24:15 again, make this choice, make this decision. If it seems evil for you to serve the Lord, then choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. So today, make that choice, make that decision to serve the Lord. Amen. Because someday there's going to be a decision that you won't be able to make for yourself. Because someday the Lord is going to decide. He's going to separate the sheep from the goats. It's going to be heaven or hell. So we need to make that decision today. If we're going to serve the Lord or if we're going to serve other idol gods. My decision is, as for me and my house, I'm going to serve the Lord. So today, it's time to make a choice. It's time to make a decision that we can make for ourselves, because someday the Lord is going to be there in that valley of decision, and He will decide on that day. I hope I've been a blessing to you today. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day, and join us the next time on PHT in the Morning with Pastor David Miller. Have a great day.